Well, hello and welcome to the New Book of Daniel podcast. My name is Daniel Bobinski, and I'll be your host on this adventure. Today, I want to kind of keep it short and talk a little bit about critical race theory. But before I do, let me tell you that if you like what you're watching and if you like to see what we're doing in the future, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. And then, of course, click the little bell so you can get notified when we go live or when we upload new shows that are pre-recorded. Of course, if you want to follow my writings on things, you can always do that at uncoverdc.com and at Red State, and of course, True Idaho News, the website I started here to focus on issues in Idaho. And so with that, I want to talk about an article that I wrote back in March, I believe. We published it, and it has to do with critical race theory originating in Marxism. And of course, a lot of folks don't think that that's true, especially if they're in the educational realm. So what exactly is critical race theory? It is one of many critical theories. You go back to the 1960s is where critical theory started. And it's not just about race. Critical theory means looking at society as if there were oppressors and victims. So you have critical race theory, the one we all hear about today. But you also have what they call feminist critical theory. And then you have critical legal theory and critical queer theory. Lots of different theories. So in other words, there's an oppressor and there are oppressed. And so I encourage you to go to TrueIdahoNews.com and take a look at the article, Parents Beware, Critical Race Theory Originates in Marxism. And the reason that it was started in this country was that Marxists realized that they were not going to win America over with the typical Marxist approach. Marx was all about dividing the working class from the upper class, the proletariat from the bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie. I always have trouble with that word. And so class warfare was the struggle that helped Lenin finally institute it and overthrow the government in 1917 in Russia. He did it through class warfare. He used multiple factions. In fact, there's a pretty good article over at uncoverdc.com that I wrote about the insurrection of 1917 and how the Marxists today in America are using Lenin's letter there kind of as a playbook. It's as you read his letter as to how he brought about Marxism, which is technically Leninism, into Russia in 1917. It's a step-by-step. You can look at what he did and what's happening in America, and it parallels beautifully. Or perhaps not so beautifully. But anyways, they realized that Americans weren't buying it because we have free enterprise here. And if you are rewarded based on the amount of effort you put in. That wasn't happening in Russia. You didn't have that kind of system 100 years ago, but you've always had it in America. And so people are coming in to say, hey, class warfare. And so what? If I want to work a little harder, I can move up to middle class or I can move up to upper class. And they realize that they're not gaining any foothold. So to make the difference, they had to find a way to divide us and pit us against each other. And how better to do that than with anything they can find to divide us, whether it is race or gender or your sexuality, different than gender. In fact, on the article, there's actually an oppression matrix, racism, sexism, gender oppression, heterosexism, classism, ableism, religious oppression, and ageism and adulting, so to speak. So you have a privileged group and an oppressed group. This is the way they replaced Marx's upper class, lower class, bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. So it gets the same effect, though. You get people fighting each other and dividing each other. So when I hear the phrase, which started off with strength through diversity, I always was bothered by that sentence, by that phrase, because diversity is rooted in division. And when you divide something, you don't make it stronger, you make it weaker. Take any brick, take a cinder block, you crack it, it is no longer as strong as it was when it was whole. So when you have strength through division, you don't have strength. But people bought into it. Well, now I get the idea of their motive behind it. Is a better way to say it is strength through valuing the differences that we all bring to the table. But that's not a good soundbite. Doesn't roll off the tongue as easy. So they use strength through diversity. Again, the problem with that is that diversity means division. When you watch the movie Cool Runnings, and I encourage you to do that, toward the beginning of the movie, the main character in the movie is running a 100-yard dash, and behind him on the chain link fence behind him is a big banner that says "Strength through Unity." Funny how they have that in Jamaica, and that's actually very true. We do have strength through unity. It'd be fun if they did that in our country, where they made that the motto, strength through unity. No matter what color or sex or gender or whatever you have that might divide us, if we unify around American principles, then we become a stronger country. But of course, the Marxists didn't want that. They wanted to divide us. So really, when you think of the phrase critical theory, it is the study or the theory or the concept in which there is an oppressed class and an oppressing class. It doesn't have to be a upper or lower class. It's just a group of people doing the oppressing and a group of people who are being oppressed. So for example, a privileged social group in critical theory is white males. If you're a white male, then you are an oppressive group. You are a privileged class. Then, of course, the oppressed group would be females. And if you're a female of color, then you're all the more oppressed, right? It goes down the line. You know, heterosexual, you're an oppressive class. If you're homosexual or lesbian, then you are oppressed. If you are a Protestant, you are an oppressive class. And if you are a Jew or a Hindu or a Muslim, then you're being oppressed. That's just the way that they position things in order to divide. All right. Think of it this way. Critical race theory is a politically correct term for cultural Marxism. How about that? That's a good way to say it. It means looking at the world through the eyes of the oppressed and forcing everybody to look at the world as to what it means to be oppressed. Rather than focus on unity, they're focusing on division. This, in my opinion, runs counter to effective health of a society. For 30 years, I've been an executive coach and a corporate trainer. When I go in as a consultant, I talk about the need for unity. And one of my Danielisms that I teach all of my clients is that you're going to get more of what you focus on. Whatever you focus on, that's what you're going to get more of. So if you focus on what went wrong, then you're always pointing blame at people and people are always feeling blamed. But if you're focusing on solutions, people start thinking about solutions. You're going to get more of what you focus on. So I say this whole idea of focusing on what it means to be oppressed, that might be a lesson in a class, but it should not be the whole theme of the entire school. And that's what it's become. I went to elementary school in the 60s. We learned about slavery. We learned about oppression back then, but it wasn't the theme that overrode the entire class. It was just a portion. It was a lesson in a class. And I grew up hating slavery and hating oppression. I didn't need an entire school theme to drill that into my head. And that's what they're doing today, and it's causing division. I just listened this morning to a gentleman who is about 17 years old, who was testifying before a school board, who said that every day he's made to feel less than because of his skin color and his gender. He's male, he's white, and he's made to feel like there's something wrong with him. That does not bring about a unified society. Sorry, just doesn't. So everywhere you look now, you have Marxists claiming that just because someone has white skin, they're automatically a racist. If you have an institution in a Western civilization, it's a racist institution. And I say it's kind of racist to make such an assumption. because that's not looking at the facts. It's not looking at what is. It's just making a broad, sweeping generalization and saying that it's true. So here's something that I want to highlight. No matter what you do, you cannot win in this battle. If you try to have a discussion with somebody about critical theory and you say anything, they say, well, you're white, you're not allowed to talk about it because you're an oppressor, so nothing of what you say counts. And then they say, if you're white and you're silent, well, then silence is violence. Have you seen those signs? White silence is violence. So you're really damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you try to say something, you're not allowed to because you're an oppressor, which you say doesn't matter. But if you're silent and you just keep your mouth shut, then you're just advocating for violence anyways. You can't win with this. Is this the way that we want our children to grow up? No matter what color you are, is this the kind of thinking that you want to see in our culture? I don't. Not at all. I say, parents, it is well past time to stand up, make your voices heard, and stop critical theory from being taught in our schools. The problem is that our educators don't see it as critical theory as being a problem. They don't see what I just described to you as the privileged group and the oppressed group, that those are aspects or components of critical theory, and yet they are. I'll emphasize, let's go ahead and keep this stuff in a lesson, but let's not make it the entire curriculum. It can't and shouldn't be, because that's going to only create division. Our school boards are elected, at least they are in my state, that there's an increased movement across the country to have school boards be appointed. To me, that's a dangerous thing, because then you're putting all the power in the hand of one person who's easily corrupted. I think school boards should be elected. And I think that people who are strong, liberty-minded patriots should be running for the school board. It's not glamorous. But unless we get in there and really make a good ground game and get elected, we're basically abdicating for the leftists, Marxists to say, we don't care what you think. The school board is supposed to represent the parents in the community. That's what an elected official does. The elected official represents the community. We don't elect them to be kings. We elect them to represent. And you break that word down, it's represent, to present again. So when you as a parent have a view and you come to your school board as a group of parents sharing your point of view, they should be listening. The problem is that they're not, because they think that they've been elected to be the arbiters of all things true. Our job is to get in there and make a difference. Now, I'm going to recommend that you don't get in there and wave a bunch of signs and yell and scream, because then they blame it and that you're just a bunch of reactionaries. I've seen it happen. I am going to recommend that people attend the meetings and establish relationships with these people. The people themselves aren't necessarily the problem. They are a factor in the problem, but they are not the problem. The problem is we've let the system get away. The system is supposed to operate, but the system only operates as well as, well, people will allow it to. So if we go in, we attend the meetings and establish relationships with people, let them know that you don't hate them, that you realize they just got in there to try to help, and most of them did. Some of them might have evil intent, but work with them. Don't clash with them. That doesn't make a lot of difference. I've not seen a lot of difference with a lot of screaming and yelling and sign waving. But I have seen an impact when people establish relationships. And oftentimes it happens behind the scenes when you can make a difference. Some call it tugboat politics. I don't agree with that all the time. But when you understand the system and you work with the people who are in the system, you can make a bigger impact. So that's about it for my topic today. I don't really want to spend much time on it other than to encourage you to get involved. We've got some people here in Boise, Idaho that have gotten very involved. They had to fight to find out when the school board meetings were. They don't even make it very popular, very well known as to when they're meeting. So there is this kind of effort to kind of hide it and keep it hush hush and not bother with parents' input, because most parents come in and they just complain. They don't offer to help. But these ladies went in, and it's all ladies at this point, about 14 of them. And they established a little group, and they go in and they establish relationships, and they attend the board meetings, and they find out what's going on, and they will be making a difference in what happens in the Boise School District. And for that, I'm glad. I encourage you to do similar things. This is Daniel Bobinski with the New Book of Daniel podcast. I thank you very much for listening. Again, if you're new to the podcast, go down below, click that red subscribe button on YouTube, click the little bell so you can get notified. And if you want to follow my writings on things, you can go to uncoverdc.com, Red State, and of course, trueidahonews.com. And of course, if you have any comments that you want to leave, go ahead and leave some comments in the section down below. And I will leave a link to this article on critical race theory in the show notes down below as well. So with that, I thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time here on the New Book of Daniel show. Until the next time, be blessed.